So as a new rider and somebody who has had this Low Rider ST for about a year and a half or so, obviously I've done a lot of riding around towns, but I want to know what it's like taking this thing out on highway trips, and not just around town, but actually a day trip or maybe even longer. So in this video, we are going to take this out. I'm going to get my feet wet on a day trip, pretty much doing mostly highway, just to get a feel for this bike, and if I do think I could take long trips on this. And stay tuned to the end, because I will give you my thoughts and then also tell the thoughts of my buddy who will be joining me on his Low Rider S. Alright, so we made it to Fort Scott. No issues so far. It's been a pretty comfortable ride. Time to stop for some gas. You just getting beat up by the wind and stuff?
Not really.
No?
I don't mind it. I zone out though. I'm just like,
Yeah. Of course, like right as we started, I got smacked in the middle of the visor with a nice juicy one. And I think it's a great day because there's no semi traffic. If this were like Monday through Friday, there'd be so many semis. Yeah. I picked a bad pump. I got a bad pump. Oh shit, I forgot I drove off without my gas cap. Whoops. That was stupid. Gas cap. Alright, so we're about 78 miles in. I think we have about another 40 to 50 miles to go where we're going. So far it's been pretty comfortable in this thing, man. Really no complaints. Windshield's been fine. Just cruising at about 80, 85. It's been nice. The weather's been perfect. Not a lot of traffic. Alright, so that was nerve-wracking. I didn't realize the speed limit dropped back there. And then there was a cop sitting on the side of the road that I also didn't see. And then as I was coming up behind him, he turned his lights on. Like, oh boy. But I don't see him yet, so I think I might be in the clear. Fingers crossed. Five miles. I thought that cop was coming for us. I didn't realize the speed limit dropped. Alright, so this area is technically the very north side of Pittsburg. And just right off the bat, I mean, there's so much more out here than what used to be. kind of jealous because they have a B-dubs now, and we did not have that available when I was down here. We had Applebee's, and I think that Chili's. Maybe we didn't have an Applebee's, it was just the Chili's. That was the place to go. Like, new barbecue place. Kids down here are getting spoiled now. Alright, so this is the downtown area of Pittsburgh, and again, back when I was going here, there wasn't much here. There were a couple bars, and that was about it. Two breakfast places, but as far as like shops, there weren't a whole lot. But now, I mean, this place has been cleaned up like crazy. So that was the one breakfast place. It was okay. I think I went there once. But the other one is right down here called Harry's. Best hangover food ever. It's funny, every Sunday morning, you'd go in there and just be packed full of college kids, all hungover. So there for a breakfast to kind of help cure that hangover. Really good mom and pop breakfast place for sure. Sure, there's some hungover people in there right now. Oh, and of course there's a coffee shop across from there. The only coffee place that we had was a Starbucks, and so far I've seen like 3 or 4 other ones. Like, must be nice. So I lived right over here. There's a Thai place, and there was a porn place next to it. Obviously it's not it, but we lived in that White House right there. Definitely it was like living in a frat house, but not an actual frat house. And here is the Pitt State campus. Of course there's a bar across, because why not? Yeah, so I went to college there. Didn't spend a whole lot of time in these buildings. My main area was the tech center. We are not going to a frat wash. No, thank you. How come the sorority girls aren't out doing car washes? Come on. My bike could use a good wash. And this is basically the south end of Pittsburgh. So it does not take very long to get through at all. Apparently there's a casino here now, somewhere off the byway. That's the byway, so you can pass the whole town if you want to drive all the way through, which is nice. But somewhere down there is a casino. Glad that wasn't there when we were in school, because it would have been bad. So where we're going for lunch is inside the smallest mall I've ever been into. The deli right here. That's where we're going. So lunch was good, hit the spot. So if you guys ever find your way driving through Pittsburgh, check out the deli here at the mall. Good sandwiches for sure. That French dip was on point. Now we're just gonna do a little bit of driving around town and then go stop for some coffee. So this is where I spent most of my life when I was down here for the 2 years or whatever. I had to do a photo op for the thumbnail. You want a picture of your bike anywhere? So a bit of a fun fact, this is the tallest building in southeast Kansas. Goes to show you how much of a small town area this is. So that was a good little day trip down to Pittsburg, Kansas. Cool getting to see some areas where I haven't been to in a long time. Got some good food and coffee. And now heading back. We're on the north side of town now, so we got about an hour and a half, about 104 miles back home, which I think will go smooth, just like the ride down here. There's definitely been a lot of bikers out today, which is nice to see. I could barely hear my exhaust over his. He's got the two brothers, 2 into 1. Sounds really good. So it's been a couple days since I took that trip, and I've had some time to kind of think about it and reflect on really answering the question in this video on, is this bike capable of going on road trips? And the short answer is absolutely. Honestly, it was a extremely fun day. I think it helped that the weather was really nice. It wasn't like we weren't getting toasted or anything like that in the dead of the summer, so I think the weather played a nice factor in that. But the bike itself was awesome. It handled great, had no issues whatsoever, didn't obviously have any overheating problems or anything like that. So the bike was comfortable going down there. So I think the entire trip there and back, we were gone for just under 6 hours and then about 225 miles. Now I know a lot of you guys out there, I'm like, oh, we do that in no time. That's not really a trip. I get that, but you know, for me, mainly coming from just riding around town, and you know, that is pretty much a trip. It was a day trip and a little outside my comfort zone, and I wanted to see what it felt like doing pretty much all highway miles on this bike. And just as I thought, it was great. Had no issues. So this bike is definitely capable of taking road trips, whether it's a day trip like that, or obviously with the saddlebags and the potential to add more luggage to this thing. Yeah, you could take it for a multi-state trip across the country if you really want to do that. Obviously, comfort and stuff like that is going to come into play, but if you're fine with a bare bone bike like this with no infotainment and kind of the mid controls and everything, hey, take this across the country. And I know a lot of people do. A lot of people take this on a multi-state trip, pack it up, but I wanted to see that for myself. Obviously, being a new rider, haven't done any long distance highway trips on a motorcycle, so I wanted to get my feet wet. I wanted to kind of know what it felt like riding for, you know, a few hours in the same day, kind of back to back, and then, you know, how the motorcycle felt and stuff like that. So it was kind of a trip to get my feet wet, because I do want to take this thing out on longer trips, and I just wanted to kind of see what it would feel like being on this thing for an extended period of time, just doing straight highway. And as much as I do want to take this out on longer trips like that, of course we're coming up to the time of year where right now it's perfect, but we're going to be running into...
Winter is coming.
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 Which kind of sucks, because it seems like this riding season kind of went by pretty fast. I'm over 9,000 miles on this bike total so far, so gonna probably have to bring it in for the 10,000 mile service probably before winter. I'll probably be at that by like next month, no problem. But obviously, me being on the Low Rider ST, the comfort was there. Obviously, I wasn't getting hammered by wind, obviously with the fairing set up, and I did have storage. I had my bags, and I did have a saddle bag that I had a couple other things in as well, but plenty of storage for a short day trip, maybe a short overnight trip, stuff like that. These bags aren't the biggest on here, so that if you want to go on a multi-state trip, multi-day trip, things like that, then yeah, you are going to have to add some more luggage to the back of this, which really isn't a problem. And one thing that made the highway trip enjoyable was the 6th gear, the 117 engine, because it made it easy to pass people even in 6th gear and everything. And then cruise control makes it way more comfortable. That way you can take your hands off and kind of stretch a little bit. Now, there was only really one complaint that I had, and I knew I was going to have this, so it wasn't any surprise, is obviously I have the stock bar set up. So after, probably on our way back, probably about halfway through on our way back, I did notice my back starting to hurt, and being able to take my hands off, you know, with cruise control, kind of lean back, did help. But I think if I, you know, go on a day trip like that's fine, I can deal with that. But if I'm going to go on a, you know, multi-state trip where I'm going to be gone, you know, maybe we're putting 6 hours plus on a bike in a day, I don't know if these bars would be comfortable enough to do that on. The ride down there didn't really feel anything in my back, but on the way back, it definitely started feeling it. And it's just because, you know, these stock bars have more of an aggressive riding style, so you're leaned forward and down a bit more than you pretty much want to be on a touring setup. But this is not technically made to be a touring bike. It's more of that sportier type feel for ripping around town, which it does great. And that's when these handlebars come in handy. But since I do want to take this on longer trips, you know, I really did clarify that I do need to do some sort of a rise and pull back, whether that's the cheapest route and go in the 6-inch risers with the 2-inch pullbacks and not having to mess with any of the cables. Would that be enough? I don't know. Most people who do that end up going a different route and kind of wasting that money on there. So that's something I'll have to decide probably over this winter. But even if you still have that stock handlebar set up, I mean, yeah, you can definitely take this on the highway. You know, depending on your height and everything, you may find these bars comfortable and that not be an issue. So, but for me, yeah, I definitely just verified the fact that I need to do something with the bar setup if I am going to take it for longer road trips, which I do plan on to hopefully next year. And honestly, the seat was comfortable the entire time. I have the Settlement Explorer seats, if you're new here and didn't know that. And, you know, unlike the stock seat where you really, after a little bit of riding, you start feeling like the frame and stuff underneath that foam. I mean, the fact that you're sitting on that gel pad in the seat, it was comfortable. I didn't have any issues. And what was nice is it does have that little bit of a backrest, not much, but a little bit, to where when you do kind of sit back like this, you know, you kind of feel it on your lower back and kind of gives you a little bit more support. But the Settlement Explorer seat was definitely comfortable for that basically 3-hour ride. Mid controls wasn't a problem, you know, being only 3 hours. Didn't have to really stretch my legs or anything. I do have the highway bars, the mustache engine guard that I could put my feet on the left side, not the right side, because the air cleaner is in the way. But again, I didn't feel the need to have to do that. Maybe after a longer ride, I would have to do that, but just a 3-hour ride, and the fact that, you know, by the time you have to gas up, you need to stretch anyway. So the fact that I think we probably could have gotten there all the way without having to fill up, but we ended up stopping in Fort Scott just to kind of top off and stretch a little bit. But I think the gas tanks are a perfect size, because by the time you need gas, you're probably at the point to where you want to get off and stretch anyway. Now, my buddy who was on the 2020 Low Rider S obviously has no bags, no fairings. He said he was comfortable. I mean, he was listening to music, kind of zoning out. He really didn't have any complaints. He's used to not having a windscreen or fairing, so I mean, he's used to that setup, so not having that was no problem to him. You know, obviously he's more susceptible to wind and getting beat up by that and bugs and stuff like that, but he said he was super comfortable on his bike. It is a stage 2 Low Rider S, so it does have more power. He's got a 2-in-1 exhaust, definitely nice loud exhaust. I'm not sure if me personally I would want that exhaust, just because it is a loud exhaust, and if you're riding for several hours at a time or like the entire day, that might get a little annoying, which is why I went with the slip-ons that I have currently. But hey, he loves that setup, so he was kind of in the same boat as, like, yeah, that's a good day trip, maybe a couple states here and there, but as far as, you know, maybe going up to Sturgis, that would not be the bike for him to do that on. Obviously he's doesn't have any storage, and not having a fairing, you know, going up to Sturgis, that would definitely change things. So, but kind of the day trips that we just did, and maybe a little bit longer, you know, he can do on that bike. But anything major, he would definitely want, he said, to get a touring bike for sure. Now, the ride down there, I didn't really have to deal with much wind, really no wind gusts or anything like that. It was actually pretty perfect. On the way back, however, there was more noticeable crosswinds, and that's where you kind of do feel that on these softail platforms, because, you know, they are lighter than a touring frame, and so you are going to get blown around a lot more on these things than you would probably the touring bike. I haven't taken an extended highway ride with the touring bikes, but just the fact that how they're set up and they're heavier, you probably still get blown around, obviously, but probably not as much or as easy on something like this. So there were some crosswinds. I was like, oh man, there were a couple of them I definitely felt. And yeah, so, you know, if you're going in the middle of nowhere, like if we're going in western Kansas where there's nothing stopping that wind, I don't know, that might not be very fun on a smaller platform like this. Can you do it? Sure. But yeah, you're gonna be fighting those crosswinds for sure. But I mean, that's part of riding a motorcycle for sure. But so yeah, so that was a fun trip. It was nice going with a buddy, just to have somebody to go with. I do love riding by myself out here solo, but every now and then it is nice to ride with a buddy and kind of go exploring together. And especially since that was my first kind of all highway trip, you know, having somebody that's been riding for years and years, that's experienced, kind of nice to have them tagging along too. Now, for whatever reason, and let me know if you guys know the solution to this or not. So we both have cardio comm systems in our helmet. I have the TalkPack Edge. He has one that's a step down. It doesn't have that DTS or whatever. It's just really Bluetooth. And I know you can connect those through the app. And we got it to work for like the 30 seconds when we were off the bikes. But then for whatever reason, they just disconnected and we cannot connect our cardio systems. So what we had to do is just basically connect each other's to like our phones, and then we just had to like talk to each other through our phones connected to the cardio. And that's fine when you're kind of next to each other, not on the highway. But then if if he's several car lengths behind me, or when we were on the highway, can't hear him at all. Like, we could not, even talking through our phones, couldn't hear each other talk for whatever reason. So that's the second time that's happened to us. We tried that on another trip to Weston that we did, and again we got them to connect briefly, but then they lost connectivity even though we were still right next to each other. We just haven't been able to get them to stay connected. So If you guys know a solution to that, let me know. We were obviously doing the app for the Bluetooth and it wasn't working for whatever reason, so that's the only downside. And so yeah, so I'm glad I got to take this out, stretch her legs, get my feet wet on kind of a highway trip to see what it would feel like and kind of what to expect. So if you guys got any value out of this video, especially if you're looking at maybe getting one of these bikes, and you know, if it is highway capable, the answer is obviously yes. Depending on how long you're going to ride, may or may not be, but you know, for a short day trip like that, or if you're one of the, there are, like I said, plenty of people, especially on YouTube, that will take these things cross country. I don't know, I think if I'm doing that, I would prefer to have a touring bike, just because it's going to be a lot more comfortable, better suspension, you know, the shifting, you never feel that on those things, and just more storage. But hey, you know, if you're doing a lot of twisty roads, this is definitely the bike for that as well. So there are a lot of people that are actually coming down from touring bikes and getting these instead, just because you could still kind of tour with them, but they're a lot easier to maneuver around town. And that's what a lot of us do too, is just take these bikes out on nice days like this and go for a bit of a ride, not necessarily touring on them. So that is one thing I've noticed, is more and more people coming down from touring bikes to these. And yes, they can tour. It's just what are you willing to compromise at the end of the day, as far as like comfort and some amenities, things like that. But yeah, if you guys like this video and want to be notified when I come out with more motorcycle related content, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button so you can be notified when I come out with more videos. And in the meantime, go ahead and check out this video that the YouTube algorithm is recommending you watch next.